What's up, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Believe in Falcons. I'm your host, Will McFadden. Joining me after a bit of a hiatus is former Falcons fullback Ovie Mughelli. Ovie, how you doing, man? It's been a long time.
I'm blessed. It's great to be here in the new year of 2024 and to have a lot to look forward to. I've been enjoying some good shows, enjoying my family. Day job's going well, so I'm excited, man. 2023 is looking real fun.
Yeah, 2023 is going to be a bit busier for me. As many of you, if you listen to the show, you may know. If you don't, this is your first time, welcome aboard. But had a kid, so I went on paternity leave. That's why we are now back. Missed kind of the final few games there. I didn't miss them. I still watched them. So I have thoughts and opinions. And if you follow me on Twitter, at Will McFadden, at Ovie Mughelli 34, check him out. But you got those thoughts. It's just we didn't get a chance to do them in podcast form.
True.
And the Falcons actually won some of those games.
How about that?
I know, man. So I missed that. I wanted to talk about it. We're going to kind of talk about that today, give our final big takeaways from the 2022 season, just put a nice little bow on that. Ovie, how does that sound, man?
Sounds good to me, man.
All right. Well, since we've waited, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8 weeks between podcasts and talking about Falcons football, let's wait a little bit longer and briefly talk about a show. You mentioned shows that we both love. We like to pull back the curtain a little bit, let people know a little bit about us. You're a huge Walking Dead super fan, and you also love Game of Thrones. So I can't kind of picture a better Venn diagram crossover of your interest than The Last of Us on HBO, man. Tell me about it. How great is that?
It's so good, man. It's so good, especially somebody. I'm a big kid. Those who know me, follow me. I play all the video games. I have a really nice setup here. My house, I got my 250-inch screen, theater screen. And so I put the PS5 plugged in when I played like The Last of Us 1 and The Last of Us 2. From beginning to end, I played the game like 2, almost 3 times each because it's just so much fun. So to make a actual movie from a game that I'm in love with, it's been great. And they've done a great job. They've made some changes here and there, some a little controversial, but I think the movie is just, or the series is great, man. It is such a wonderful way to see your characters come to life and have them living, breathing, feeling, and going through the craziest situations week after week.
Yeah, and I remember talking to Caleb McGarry actually towards the end of the season because he's a big video game fan as well. Yeah. We were talking God of War specifically, but then I brought up the Last of Us series, and I was like, are you excited for that? And he brought up, that there just really have not been very many good video game adaptations on either the big screen or, maybe for television. And so he was a little bit trepidatious. I've checked in with him since the show. He's not yet gotten around to it, but he promises me that he will. So I'll have to figure out how he feels and report back. But the third episode with Bill and Frank and my guy, Nick Offerman, who I love as an actor,
it's right here.
Television. And it was not in the game that way, which is something that as I played the game as well, one of my favorite games, maybe my favorite game of all time. And I was really excited by the fact that that's not in the game, but it's kind of still true.
Backstory. Yeah.
The world, it's fleshing out this world that I love.
Yes.
And so I can't wait to see how they do a bit more of it. What is your thought on Joel and Ellie?
All right. Like everyone else, I wanted Ellie to look like Ellie in the game. I played it for so long. I have it ingrained. And so like
Bella Ramsey, the actress.
That's not my Ellie. And Bella did a great job. Everyone was saying, give her a chance, let her, watch the show. Everyone, wants to have the game be 100% crossed over. And you got to change a little bit, as we saw in the third episode. I think Joel's doing a great job. I think Ellie's doing a great job. The actors are playing Joel and Ellie are doing a wonderful job. And they're making me believe that they're those characters. So I can't wait for tonight's episode. I can't wait to I listen to some of the podcasts that comes with it just so you can get the background. I always kind of see what people are saying and talking about it, but it's just fun, man, because I think one of my favorite movies is World War Z, zombie, apocalyptic, end of the world, but it has to be done well. It has to have good acting. It has to have a good story. It has to, be a human part of it. And Last of Us does all those things so well in the series.
Yeah. Have you seen Chernobyl?
I haven't, but you know what? When I found out that people who made Last of Us made Chernobyl, I'm like, These guys did an amazing job. Cinematography and pacing. I gotta watch Chernobyl now.
You have to. It's my favorite, I think, thing HBO has done, maybe including Game of Thrones. Like, just, it's 6 episodes. Every episode, I pun kind of intended, but not intended because of the radioactivity and the Chernobyl nuclear, but it will melt your face. Every single episode is just insanely good, dude. It like, the slow episodes are slow in the best possible way, where they build the drama and you connect with the characters. And then the intense episodes are just like white knuckle, sick to your stomach kind of feeling, where it's almost like Jaws. Like, you know what's in the water and the people don't, and they're going in the water anyway. And it's like,
the trailer alone has me. The trailer really alone, with people's faces melting off and just the the narrator behind it. I'm like, I gotta watch this. I really gotta watch this. So now I'm going to.
There you go. All right, so that has been enough of Movie Corner. Let's get to a little bit of Falcons football, which is what you came here for after that long preamble, and we're going to get to that right after this. All right, Ovie. So when I texted you my idea for this 2-parter, so should have mentioned that up at the top, but you're getting it right here after the ad break.
Yeah.
2-part episode. Next one will either drop tomorrow when you're listening to this, or maybe 2 days after you listen to this. But the first part is going to be kind of each of our top 5 takeaways from the 2022 season. So that's going to be the podcast that you are listening to right now. We're going to go back and forth and just kind of quickly touch on the big picture things that we didn't get a chance to touch on when the season wrapped up, for reasons that we mentioned previously. The second podcast is going to be more forward-looking. We're going to go back and forth and share our top 3 storylines, or just things that we need to see from this Falcons team this offseason, a pretty pivotal one in 2023, and kind of touch on those topics a little bit more and kind of preview what's to come. So you got a little bit of a look back and a look forward, but let's start by looking back, Ovie. Big picture thoughts on the 2022 season real quick, since I didn't get them from you earlier.
I mean, big picture thoughts is that we're better, much better than people thought we were going to be, which was not hard, because people thought we were going to be horrible, like the worst team. And so it is an accomplishment, but like it's not. We had to win 3 games to surpass expectations. But overall, absolutely, people did not think this rebuild would be rebuilding so fast. And so it's good to see that we're ahead of schedule. Good to see that we're put ourselves in a position to where this offseason can really make us one of those teams that go to, we won, 5, 6, 7 games, to we're a playoff team. We're a dark horse. Oh my God, we're in the Super Bowl. Like, that's actually a possibility. Like, people won't laugh hysterically when you say that, because we did so much with so little and have a foundational core and culture that is something you can work with when you get some of these high dollar free agents and some of these really top draft picks. We can make some noise. So that's my overall feeling. It's positive. I know people try to be positive regardless, because that's your favorite team, but it actually is a positive scenario for most Falcons fans. Not to mention winning the last game against Tom Brady. Tom didn't play the whole time, but still, when Tom was in there, he wasn't doing what he wanted to when he wanted to. We were showing him that, hey, we're going to fight till the end. And it was just good to have Tom be frustrated playing against the Falcons. He deserves that.
He does deserve that. He deserves all of the great things that he's accomplished in his life, but he also deserves to lose to the Falcons in his final regular season game. So
absolutely,
life's crazy like that. But yeah, you mentioned the expectations, and one of your favorite things I think to point out throughout the season was, like, people picked this team to win 2 games, and they obviously finished 7-10, 5 more wins than the 2 that were predicted. Same record as last year, but unlike last year, they didn't have Matt Ryan. Unlike last year, they didn't have Calvin Ridley for 4 or 5 games. Unlike last year, the offense was much more kind of confined, I think, or at least the ways in which they could be creative were a little bit more down one path instead of the multiple paths that maybe Matt Ryan offered you. So it was a different year, but the fact that they were still 7-10 and the fact that they were still in contention for the division, now it's cracked division, but that speaks to, I think, that optimism that you're talking about. And just kind of the sense of, all right, it wasn't a playoff year. It was 7-10. And most years, like most teams, when you're picking 8th in the draft, like you're not going to be super happy. But maybe the Falcons should look at this a little bit differently. So with all of that, let's get to your number 5 takeaway from the 2022 season.
And I want to steal some of yours, but I'm going to go right to this because it's my position group. It's my thing. And this is my guy who I had a chance to sit down with. Didn't realize till halfway through the dinner for the Falcons Honors Awards for the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. That's Tyler Allgeier. I'm sitting next to Tyler Allgeier and talking to his lady, and my wife's talking to his significant other, and we're just chumming it up. And he was such a humble, good-natured, all shucks type of guy. And I was
like, kid, man.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, you remind me of me a little bit because I was always, I feel like not up until like my last like 1 or 2 years in the league, I was all shucks. I'm happy to be here. Then my last couple of years, I'm like, nah, I'm that dude. Like you watch out. Like I carry myself a little more bravado, but Tyler's just an all shucks type of guy. But he is a beast on the field. He has just exploded onto the scene and not made Cordarrelle Patterson irrelevant, but he showed us that he could be a workhorse. He can carry the load. He can get those tough yards in red zone or short yardage. And he's somebody who can, even play all 3 downs if necessary. We saw him use his hands in ways that surprised me. I thought he was just a bruiser type of a tailback, and he broke a record, or him and William Andrews
record.
1,000 yards for a rookie. It's just amazing to see how much he's done in his first year here, and all he can do is get better as long as he works hard, keeps his nose clean, stays humble. Tyler Allgeier is one of my big takeaways. The Falcons are lucky to have him.
You know what I love most about Tyler Allgeier, and I suspect that this is why you love him as well, is that dude finishes runs harder than anybody else that I've seen in a long time. I mean, Michael Turner finished runs, but he kind of finished runs just by the nature of like how freakishly large he was.
Yes.
It was almost like unintentional pain that he inflicted.
Effortless.
On just, Will Weatherspoon like flying off of his like thigh, because that's just how big Michael Turner is. You can kind of tell with Tyler Allgeier, it's like, all right, he hurdled a dude in like one of the last games of the season, and then like, boom, I'm going to land my next foot and see if I can punish somebody in the same move. It's just really, really fun to watch. I don't have him specifically because I figured you would, and I tied him into a bigger takeaway a little bit later on. So this won't be the last that we talk of Tyler Allgeier, but that's a great way to kick this off, because an argument could be made that like he's the number 1 takeaway from the season is the breakout of your number 1 running back, hopefully moving forward.
And you got him for pennies on the dollar. You got him cheap.
Exactly.
That's the win.
Cheap. So it's, great way to start things off. My number 5, we talked going into the year about kind of this is a year to find answers. You got a lot of questions. You got to find some answers moving forward. I think they found some, but defensively specifically, I think there are still more questions than there are answers. I think that AJ Terrell is the big name. Took a little bit of a step back this year. That's not to say that he's not going to return to the AJ Terrell we saw last year. It's just, maybe the real truth is somewhere in the middle of these 2 seasons, which was always probably likely. It's either he's a perennial All-Pro and a surefire Hall of Famer, like at the end of his career, or, he's probably somewhere between a Pro Bowler some years and a good starter other years. And I think this year he just took a little bit of a step back. Grady Jarrett, a great season, but he's another year older. Is he going to be able to maintain this for the foreseeable future? And then you have guys like Taquan Graham, who I thought really took a big step forward. You have somebody like Richie Grant, who at times took a nice step forward. Some younger players like Darren Hall and D. Alford I liked. But outside of those guys, what else do you have? Casey Hayward got hurt, but I still like him if they want to bring him back for his last year. Rashawn Evans and Lorenzo Carter were nice, solid pieces. They're both free agents. Outside of them, Troy Anderson is promising, but did he really take the job and run with it when he got the opportunity? At the safety position, is that a real something that's going to kind of change games for you? I'm not so sure. The pass rush is still non-existent most of the time. So I don't know, Ovie. Do you feel the same way? You're shaking your head like you do. Just more questions still than answers.
I mean, you're absolutely right, and we were hoping that, and we saw flashes, like brief flashes of brilliance in the defense.
They finished the year strong. I think I will say that they finished the year pretty strong.
They absolutely did. Some of the young guys, McFadden, and
loved his play. Yep.
Oh, it was good to see them apply some pressure. Maybe we didn't get all the sacks and get the actual payoff all the time, but you saw, or at least I felt like there was more pressure applied this season than last and in years before. So I don't know if that's all Dean Pease's scheme. And now Dean Pease is leaving. Like, are we keeping that scheme? Are we changing that scheme? Do we need to draft different type of players? And there are a lot of questions, more questions than answers on the defense across the board. But I just, as somebody who has been, an old dog with some younger guys around me and hoping that they come along, I feel bad for Grady Jarrett. You talk about him getting older. Grady was amazing this season. I mean, that's one of my takeaways. If I can go into my 4, Grady was amazing. He was absolutely amazing. I loved Grady Jarrett almost every single play. Like, at some point, you get your money, you get the Pro Bowls. They know you're the guy, you're the face, and you can kind of go to cruise control, and people may not notice really because they give you the benefit of the doubt. Grady plays like he's in his contract year every single year. I forget that every single play, he plays like this play will determine the money I get for my contract. Like, guys in their contract year ball out. They go crazy. They put their all into it because they know it can change their life forever. I was one of those guys. I worked hard, of course, first year, second year, third year. But my 4th year, my offseason before my 4th year, Ovie Mughelli was – I didn't drink alcohol. I, left the girls alone. I think I went like a 6-month strike. I didn't do nothing. I didn't do anything. I was just focused on football, and I wanted to make a point every play in practice, every play in the game, because, I had a chance from making a couple $100,000 to being a multimillionaire, and it paid off. But guys usually when they get that money, take it into a lower gear. Grady's not that guy. From his character to how he, lifts up his teammates, makes everyone better. He was just amazing this season. He was absolutely amazing. I can't give him enough flowers. I can't give him enough credit. I can't give him enough praise. And it's not just I'm a Grady fan, but I'm a Grady fan, and all of Atlanta is. So I hope that guy gets a chance to have a team around him to where he can do more than just have individual awards.
Yeah, 100%, because he's deserving of it. And it's somebody like, I think of Jonathan Babineau, who kind of his career spanned these nice little runs for the Falcons. Started kind of with the Vic era and got that playoff success in 2004, but then a little bit of a drought there. And then you guys come along and all right, all of a sudden it's like nice little way to end your career. You get that 2012 run, the push, all that stuff. I know he got to go back to Seattle, play with his brother, like all that fun stuff
that was cool.
That season. So yeah, like a great player to have. And you wish that, he gets to taste the success at the end of his career that he had at the beginning of his career. Was that your number 4 takeaway? Because it was.
Yeah, okay. I jumped into that because that was my number 4 takeaway. I just Grady Jarrett, and just like Tyler Allgeier, where I see Grady, he acts like we pick up where we last left off, and just a humble, solid guy who plays his ass off when he plays football and deserves all the good things in life.
And is a leader in the locker room, like in the community, everything you want, is as humble as it can be and a hard worker. Like, we don't need to talk anymore about Grady Jarrett. Everybody knows about Grady Jarrett.
They get the point. Our listeners get the point.
I will say though, if I'm placing a bet on any current, and this is, it would have carried more water 2 or 3 years ago when a lot of Falcons players had been on this roster for a few years. Mm-hmm. But of anybody in maybe the current era of Atlanta football, Grady Jarrett's going in the Ring of Honor one day. Like Matt Ryan and Julio for sure. But Grady Jarrett, if I had to put money on the third guy, it's Grady Jarrett. So, all right, let me go to my number 4. It's going to be special teams. Big strength for this team. And we don't need to spend too long on this because it's special teams. But Younghoe Koo, money again. Avery Williams led the NFL in punt return average. Average yards per punt return. Yeah, did he really? All year from beginning to end of the year. Like he is really, really good back there.
Wow.
I mean, you remember the Tampa Bay game when he kind of had a 40-yard punt return like right at the end of the first half to allow a field goal that really made it close. So he's played really well on special teams. I know kind of they're still finding a role for him in a couple other areas, running back out of the backfield, things like that. But special teams, dude's an ace, and that's why he was brought here. Cordero Patterson, kickoff return for a touchdown, broke the record. I mean, that was big. Their coverage units have been really solid because I think they put a lot of the veterans and the rookies. Like Troy Anderson was a standout on special teams way before he was playing on defense at the end of the year. Kadarius Hodge kind of had a nice preseason, and we were like, oh, is he going to be in the mix as a receiver? It's like, no, that dude just played special teams 24/7 and was awesome at it. So
he plays well.
That type of stuff, Damiere Byrd, like I just think with Marquise Williams, the Falcons special teams coordinator, and the way that they seem to prioritize special teams, Vrabel, Belichick, disciple, and now Arthur Smith learned from Vrabel. Like, I think he cares a lot about special teams. It's nice to have at least one unit of the three, because everybody focuses on offense, everybody focuses on defense.
They do.
Sometimes special teams makes or breaks games, and to have a coach that cares about special teams this much, I like it, and I think it's a big strength for this team. So that's my it's my number 4.
That's a solid one. I agree. As a fullback who is our requirement of us to play special teams. I was a special teams Pro Bowl alternate one year when I was in Baltimore. That kind of like showed him, hey, this guy is top fullback. He can play special teams. He's all in. And as soon as I got to Atlanta, I was like, about that special teams. Y'all don't need me, do you? Oh, you do? Okay. All right. So Keith was not playing. I tried to, do a little big dog like, hey, Keith, I'm worth $18 million. I can't hurt, these hands. I can't hurt this body. I got to block Michael Turner. He's like, Ovie, what the hell is wrong with you? How you hit your head? Oh, he got into me. He expletive laced, monologue about 5 minutes about how, who the F do I think I am? But yeah, so special teams is awesome. My number 3, go ahead.
No, I'm just like, Keith Armstrong would have just come over to the media and been like, I don't know about that Mughelli. He's trying to get out special teams work. I told him we work with everybody. Everybody got to play special teams.
I don't care who you are.
Ovie, he's trying to get away from that. I don't like it.
Oh, awesome guy. So glad he won a Super Bowl in Tampa. Number 3, Drake London. I played with Julio, played with Roddy White. I know how it is to have a number 1 receiver that you can count on, that will be double covered and make the catch, that raises his level of play when they need him most. And the Falcons haven't had that for a while. And, Calvin Ridley was trying to take Julio's place, and, he had his own situation. And it was hard for us to find that number 1 receiver. And even Kyle Pitts being a great tight end, we still needed a number 1 receiver. Drake London, I wasn't quite sure at first. When they picked him, I'm like, he looks good, and I like his moxie, and he's sitting here giving the crazy eye on a lot of his highlights. I'm like, okay, we need somebody who got a little something extra. But is he talented enough consistently, and does he have that might be in the Ring of Honor one day type of ability? Not just a very good receiver, but can he really break out? And he showed me enough to where I think he can. Now, obviously, we still wanted him to do more, but he showed me enough this year to where I'm very hopeful that building on his rookie season, Drake London can be, it sounds scary to say Roddy and Julio-ish, because those guys were, especially Julio in his prime, he can be right below Roddy and Julio, which will be better than what we've had for a long time since those guys have left.
He's a little bit of a mystery to me. I mean, not in the sense of do we know if he's good or not. I'm kind of trying to figure out what is his ceiling. Now, I don't think we have seen anything close to his ceiling because of, you mentioned Tyler Allgeier breaking the Falcons rookie rushing record for a season. Drake London broke Kyle Pitts' receptions record for a rookie. I mean, obviously, like 17 games, those two guys more likely to break it than any of the guys who played 16 games only. And Drake London got a lot of targets there at the end. I believe 31 receptions in his final 5 games. But that just speaks to the type of volume that I think he can handle. And I think that when you say he can be an X receiver, a number 1 receiver in this league, is he maybe your most dynamic? Is he maybe your most dangerous weapon on the field? Is he that type of number 1? Maybe not. But is he your prototypical X who can handle a big workload and can kind of make all of these plays, get back up, do it again, get back up, do it again, get back, and just kind of be that consistent metronome for your offense when you need him? And then you can go add these big skill weapons, these more maybe versatile, volatile guys who are like home run or bust, because you can keep going back to Drake London. And in that sense, he is like Roddy to me, because Roddy wasn't necessarily Deshaun Jackson, like or even Vincent Jackson, or I'm going to take the top off of you guys and just hit you. He could do that. He could do that, but he lived in that 12-yard curl, make the catch, shake a tackle, 8 more yards out of bounds. Now we're moving. Like, that was his game, and I think Drake London can do that as well. So
if Drake can be a Roddy White, I'll take that. I'm playing with Roddy for several years. I'm like, yo, this guy is winning us games by himself. Like, when Roddy gets hot and he gets in his little zone, he can be what a team needs sometimes. Somebody say, you know what, guys, I got it. Hop on my back. Let's go. We're winning this one. He said that almost verbatim in huddles behind. Like, hey, man, Matt, just throw me the damn ball, man. Let's make it happen. Laughing like a giggling like a child, like he always does. I think Drake London, because I'm pessimistic. The Falcons have made me, unfortunately, cynical and pessimistic about a lot of things they do, a lot of moves they make. And when I told you, I saw Drake London guy, I'm like, outside of the, liking some of his moxie and the crazy, I'm like, I haven't really heard of this guy as like, the next Julio. And I'm selfish, or I want the next Julio Jones, because I again played with Julio only for a year or two. But I was like, wow, that guy changes games. We need to replace what we lost.
Yep.
Again, may not be Julio, but if he can get to where Roddy White was, the Falcons will be in a very, very good position.
Yeah, I totally agree. I need you to remember the name Quentin Johnston out of TCU. If you're looking for a Julio-esque wide receiver, that guy reminds me a lot of Julio, but that is neither here nor there. My number 3, and it is right along the same lines of Drake London, Tyler Allgeier, is that the Falcons have a making of a big 3 on offense, and some would argue they already do. It's Kyle Pitts, it's Drake London, it's Tyler Allgeier.
I like it.
They need to build around that, and they need to build around that smartly. But when you've got the mismatches that London and Pitts can create, and then just like the bread and butter, nose to the grindstone. Hey, while you're focused on like, how do we stop all of the different things that these guys can do? I do one thing really well, and it is punish you throughout the game. And like, you're going to have to focus on both of these things. I think it's a really interesting trio for Atlanta, and I'm really curious to see how they kind of play around with the other options that they now can, because they've got kind of that hot, like, triangle of kind of threat that they didn't have coming into the season. And they haven't had, maybe at the running back position, at least in a little while. So yeah, I mean, everybody's going to talk about the quarterback position, and we will here, I'm sure, in the next little bit. But outside of that, they've got a young nucleus of skill guys that coming into this season, we weren't so sure that they had. So I think that's a nice little takeaway, is that, all right, you've got a running back, a young receiver, and a young tight end that you can definitely envision for the future of this team.
Like it a lot. My number 2 is I'm offensive guys. I've been heavy on the offense, but Tyler Allgeier couldn't do what he did if the offensive freaking line didn't ball the heck out this year. Like, we should give a literal round of applause for the offensive line, because those boys, those cornfed brothers, were doing the damn thing. They surprised me, and it got better as the year went on. And I mentioned, I mentioned that they put in the work in the offseason, because a lot of us guys, fullbacks, offensive line, the ones who are doing a lot of that heavy, gutter work in the trenches. You can want to be better as much as you want, but if you don't prepare yourself, if you don't eat right, if you don't like drastically change up your routine or put it all in that last set, you're on 3 or 4 past what you think you can do, and pushing yourself, breaking down that muscle, building it up. Technique is everything. Everyone's big, fast, and strong. Just focusing on your technique, mental. I've heard several iterations of what some of those guys did to prepare, and it all made me smile, to where I realized these guys aren't playing. Like this year, because we talked about them last year. We talked about the offensive line. They were getting, Matt Ryan beat up. They, weren't moving the ball as much as we wanted to. Again, Cordarrelle Patterson was doing amazing. Some of those yards he got himself just being Cordarrelle Patterson. The offensive line came to play this year. And watching everyone from Caleb McGarry to the whole crew step up their game, bring that nastiness, bring that edge, bring some of that, pushing the guy down and maybe using your forehand on his neck to get up. Like they had a swagger that I remember begging for last year before, begging for them to bring a little more and to have a little more respect and pride in their group and what they can do to win the game. So hats off to the offensive line. They were just grading the field and moving the defenders back several times. You see our jerseys just create these levels where they're constantly pushing back on the defense. And I gave them a lot of shit because they did not do what they were supposed to do for the longest time. But now I got to give them their props. The offensive line did the damn thing.
I know I've mentioned this stat on here before, and I don't have the final numbers in front of me, so I apologize. But I know throughout the year, Football Outsiders has a stat that's adjusted line yards, and it's basically how many yards on a running play should be attributed to the offensive line. Whether that's kind of just like you said, you can just visibly see the line is 3 yards down the field. Well, obviously the running back doesn't have to work too hard for those 3 yards.
Nope.
But if a running back has to make a defender miss in the backfield, the offensive line clearly didn't really account for many of the yards on that running play because they didn't do their job. So it factors that in. Throughout the entire year, the Falcons were like mostly top 3 and like top 5. So again, this was a unit that was a big question mark for a few seasons now. And you get guys like Caleb McGarry, who has a huge turnaround season, his best season by far as a Falcons player. Unfortunately, right after they don't pick up his 5th-year option, Chris Lindstrom, definitely a Pro Bowler for the first time in his career, should be a future All-Pro. I mean, justifies that first-round pick for Atlanta this year. Jake Matthews still bringing it, just game in, game out. He just kind of reminds me of like one of those really reliable Braves pitchers that you'd have for all of those years, that maybe he's like the 4th man in the rotation, but it's like, hey, he's kind of the reason you're going to win in the playoffs, because if your number 4 can beat their number 4, like that's great. And Jake's a little bit better than maybe a 4, but like you get my point. He's just reliable. And the offensive line was awesome this year. And I did not have them on my list because, again, I figured you would, but I'm glad that you did because I really wanted to talk about them, especially Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry. Those guys, like co-MVPs, honestly, offensively for me this season.
Absolutely. Those are the two guys that they showed a picture and it was like, They had almost abs. Like they had like these muscles, like the veins pop out their legs and walking around like Greek Norse gods. Like they belong like extras in God of War. Like these guys, their hair like all long too in the training camp. Like wow. I was like, I feel bad for the defenders in practice outside of Grady Jarrett who got to go against them because they came to make a statement. And I think that was me. Well, that was me. My 4th year in Baltimore. I remember Ray Lewis say, hey, Mughelli, what you do this offseason? They gonna test you now. That's steroids. They gonna find out if you're on steroids. I'm not on steroids. Like I'm just saying, out here running around like you crazy. So I was like, man, I got a goal in mind. And my goal is to be the best fullback in this league. He's like, all right. He's like, good. And like people can tell who are around you when that light flips on or when that switch occurs, and just the rumbles from the media and from other players. Caleb and Chris were on a mission, and it was fun to watch that throughout the season just play out in how they demolished people, how they protected Matt, and how they kind of puffed their chest out a little bit and had the pride that you expect to see out of your offensive linemen. So it was great to see, and hopefully that just continues to grow and rubs off on the defensive side.
100%. I mean, they want to build through the trenches, and you saw what that looked like on the offensive line. Now let's hope that they can do it on the defensive line. And it really helps, I think, that they don't have to, we're going into the offseason for the first time in a long time, not sitting here saying like, all right, but you got to maybe use one of that first round pick on an offensive lineman. You got to maybe use something here or there. And that's not to say they won't, but they don't necessarily have to.
I hope the guy they don't get another offensive lineman. We need defense so bad.
Yes, we do. And we've got many months to talk about that, but we've got 2 more takeaways each. So let's get through these quickly. Mine, the man behind the offensive line, Desmond Ridder. He can lead this team next season at least, and I think he can lead this team moving forward. I think that the growth that he showed, not just over those final 4 games, although those final 4 games is the growth that we should care the most about, because that came against live NFL teams, NFL competition, teams that needed wins for their playoff lives. I mean, these were meaningful games, not necessarily for the Falcons, although some of them were, but they were definitely meaningful for the other teams. And that is kind of invaluable experience, even if it ultimately didn't amount to a postseason run or anything like that. But you look back to kind of where he was when he started in the preseason. They said he was picking it up quickly, all that stuff. He gets out there in preseason games, and that first start was solid, but he built on it. He kept on building on it. He kept on improving. When he took over for Marcus Mariota, it didn't look great. It looked pretty rough. But quickly that next week, you saw some things where statistically it didn't really turn around. But for those who watched and for those who knew what Arthur Smith wanted to see from him, he showed that growth. Then the third and fourth games, the stats followed. So I think that he did everything that probably was asked of him, short of just go 4-0 down the stretch. But it's really hard for a rookie in the NFL. I'm curious to see what Desmond Ridder has. That doesn't mean I don't think that they'll bring in some competition, maybe one of these mid-level veterans that are everywhere this offseason, it seems like. Or one of these draft picks. Like I feel like there are a few Brock Purdy-ish, and that's going to be very popular for a lot of people, I think, to say during draft season. But this draft has some of those types of quarterbacks. Maybe one of them you bring in. But I think Desmond Ridder at least goes into camp next year with a solid hold on this job.
The great thing that the stat people were showing was that Desmond Ridder's first 4 games, Matt Ryan's first 4 games, they were very identical, very close to each other. So it gives me great hope to know that, hey, if we can do this without a $100 million quarterback, we're in a good place because he gives us the flexibility to fill in the holes that we have elsewhere. So my last one, because I did number 5, I think was Allgeier. Number 4 was Grady. Number 3 was Drake. Number 2 was the offensive line. And number 1 is the man who's putting this all together, Terry Fontenot. That's my takeaway.
Ooh, all right.
Terry Fontenot is a man who will make Falcons fans happy from years to come. I don't think he's going to be a hot, cold guy like Dimitrov. Dimitrov had some great wins. He had more losses and more guys. It was almost like a punchline. How many players Dimitrov drafted that weren't even, forget not on the Falcons. They weren't in the NFL anymore. All the Vic Beasleys and some of the Ray, the guy from Minnesota.
Jerry.
Ray Edwards, Ray Edwards. So it was on the draft. It was free agent. He was just missing. And fans were pulling their hair out. Again, nice guy. He rides his bicycle, does a lot of environmental stuff, and we connect. Cool guy. But he did not do the Falcons and the franchise right by saddling us with so much debt and so much bad contracts to where we're just now getting out of it. Terry Fontenot showed with just a couple seasons, been here 2 years, I believe, and has been able to hit on almost everything he's done. Almost everything he's done is turned to gold. Even these low-level picks, the Troy Andersons of the world, the special teams filling it out, finding even Marcus Mariota was a good pick for what he costs because there was more upside than downside. People didn't expect much from us anyway. And Marcus, if you rekindle that coach to QB relationship, but getting Ridder as a backup or a second option gives us a lot of opportunities to do really well. So just across the board with how he's drafted, with how he's made decisions, how he's been financially responsible with this franchise, I think it gives fans, or should give fans, a lot of excitement about this year. Yeah, we talked about it coming into the podcast, but it's going to be such a fun offseason with the free agency and with the draft and with the ability to, like you mentioned, there's a lot of talent out there, and figuring out who to pay, how much to pay, when to pay, bringing them in, and mixing this cake to where it's going to come out perfect is very, very hard, but Terry can do it. So he's my number one takeaway from the season. We're in not good hands. We're in great hands with Terry Fontenot.
With the amount of praise that you have given him on this podcast throughout the season, he better come on during during draft season.
Every time I see him, he promised me like a year and a half ago. So every time I see him at an event, like, Ovie, I got you. Before I can say anything, I was like, hey, call my people. I'll get on. So I got to cash it before the season gets started. I got to cash it before the draft or anything. I mean, he's always busy. I don't know when he's not busy, but I'll call his people. He can call my people. And we can see if we can make something happen.
There you go. That's so interesting that you have him as your number one, because my number one is the other man in charge, and that's Arthur Smith. And I think that we really, I've seen enough. I believe that Arthur Smith is a great coach. I think that he's a very good head coach as well, which is not always the same. You can be a great coordinator and not be the best head coach, but I think he kind of has and I think Terry Fontenot plays into this as well, but a very clear-eyed vision. And in some ways, having the lack of financial flexibility simplifies that, because you kind of can't get yourself in trouble. You can't have a Ray Edwards where all of a sudden you're second guessing and you're kind of like, oh, that didn't work out, so now we're scrambling. It's like they haven't put a ton of money into the stock market yet, so they haven't lost any of that money, if that makes sense. Now they have the money to spend, so we're going to get a better picture. But I just think that by and large, through the ups and downs are so much smaller with this team than they have been in years past. And I think that is a testament to the culture, to the players in the building, which speaks to Terry Fontenot and his staff. But the coaching staff knows what they want. And Marcus Mariota, Arthur Smith doesn't just have a relationship with him. I have to believe that part of it was we can't win playing everybody else's game. We have to play a totally different game.
Moneyball.
He helps us at least do that. We have to get interesting. We have to be creative. We have to do things teams haven't seen in 20 years. We have to kind of go old school be new school by going old school type of thing. And I think that that's smart. I think that listening to Arthur Smith after every game, he clearly had a plan that changed based on each matchup. Yeah. They played in, I have these 5-8 in one-score games, 13 one-score games out of 17 game schedule. Now, the NFL is built to kind of be like that. You see a lot of games around the league in the fourth quarter go from 13-point games to 7-point games there at the end. But the Falcons,
because it's rigged. There's a script. I'm finding out now that everything was scripted. I'm seeing in the memes that everything is scripted. So
it is. It's all the refs. It's the the snipers up in the up in the press box. But this is 2 years in a row that the Falcons have kind of been in more games than we thought. They were in closer games against good teams. They beat some good teams this year.
That part.
So I think that I've seen enough from the coaching staff to trust in them. The execution, a lot of that depends on the players. A lot of that depends on the talent, the ability to finish the year.
Yeah.
You can kind of figure out the other team's scheme by the midway point in the season. You got a lot of tape, you got a lot of smart guys. It kind of then becomes who has the athletes that can either open up more of your playbook for you and give you more wrinkles, or who can transcend a defense that knows what you want to do. And I think that's what the Falcons are missing. But I think the guy calling the shots is rock solid. And it sounds like you agree. So
absolutely agree. Yeah, no, Arthur Smith has done a lot of great things in time he's been here. Oh man, falling up after Dan Quinn and the Brotherhood. Oh God, bless his heart. He meant well, but it was just
he's doing all right in Dallas.
Oh yeah,
and now in wherever he gets a head coaching job next.
Exactly, because he'll get one. But to have Arthur Smith and his stoic. Appeal or the way that he presents himself. He's not here to give you any sound bites. He's not here to, entertain you. He's here to win football games, and he's here to make the right decision at the right time for the right players. And I absolutely love it. So if he can bring us some playoff wins and get us a Super Bowl, I mean,
is that all? That's all it's going to take.
That's all it takes for us to love him. No, I feel like we actually have a chance with Terry and Arthur and their relationship. We can do something special here, and it's not just me being optimistic. It's like I actually see that happening in the future.
I totally agree, and I think that's a great place to kind of wrap up this conversation, because it's one of optimism, and I think that's kind of by and large some ups and downs for this season. Games like the Washington game will leave you with a bad taste in your mouth as a little bit of a what if and stuff like that. But this is a 7-10 team that was ultimately at the beginning of the year supposed to win 2 games. The guys in charge we feel pretty good about because the decisions they've made have been soundly reasoned. They seem to be part of a plan, and by and large, they've worked out. So now we enter an offseason where they should make a lot of more high stakes decisions, I guess I would say, because they've got the big money to spend, but it should be really exciting. So please stay tuned for part 2, which will be coming up later this week. Ovie and I will get into more of the offseason, what we expect to happen, what we need to see, Ovie, this offseason for the Falcons to get back into that playoff contention like you talked about. But in the meantime, if you got any questions since we've been away about the season, about this offseason, shoot them over to believeinfalcons@gmail.com. Please follow Ovie on Twitter at Ovie Mughelli 34. You can follow me at Will McFadden. Stay posted to this feed because we're going to be bringing podcasts to you every Wednesday, weekly throughout the offseason. Going to be covering draft, free agency, getting a lot of experts, national media members, maybe some former players like Ovie himself, and of course, actually Ovie himself throughout the offseason to bring you all of the best Falcons content. Ovie, you got anything to say before I get out of here?
No, just want to thank the listeners. Really enjoyed last season and, some of the questions people asked. And I actually had some people come up to me while I was at Kroger and say, "Hey, man, I love the podcast." I was like, "You listen? Wow." Like, nah. I was like, me and my husband, we really like the podcast. And
well, thank you guys so much.
I was like, well, thank you. I was like, tell the executives that we need to get our own studio or do some shows from a sports bar or something fancy.
There you go. Yeah, now that they just finished filming or building, now that they just finished building their new studio up in Flowery Branch, they can come work on our new studio.
Exactly.
Just a little further south. But yep, that'll do it for today's podcast, which is always presented by BetOnline. Please stay tuned for part 2 coming later this week, and we will see you guys there. But until then, everybody, take care.